The sprawling Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport buzzed with the electric energy of travel. Announcements blared, families scrambled, and seasoned flight crews moved with practiced ease. At Gate 12, Nathan and Simone Reynolds, with their kids Jaden, 9, and adorable AA, 7, waited patiently for first-class boarding to begin. Years of jet-setting had taught them the value of a relaxed pace. Nathan, cool in a gray hoodie and joggers, scrolled through his phone while Simone fussed with AA's backpack. This trip to Maui was a long-overdue escape from the relentless grind of work. Jaden was glued to his Nintendo Switch, oblivious to the impending adventure. As the gate agents prepared for boarding, Jessica Barnes, a flight attendant with a decade under her belt, approached the counter. Confidence radiated from her. She straightened her blazer, her eyes sweeping over the forming first-class line, landing on the Reynolds family. A flicker of something crossed her face, a subtle surprise, maybe even skepticism. Nathan glanced up, catching her gaze. It wasn't a blatant stare, but something felt off. He exchanged a quick look with Simone. They brushed it off. "Priority boarding now commencing," announced the gate agent. Nathan produced their first-class tickets, taking AA's hand as they approached. Jessica stepped in front of them. "Excuse me, sir, this is for first-class boarding only." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I know," he said, holding up the tickets. "We're in 2A and 2B. Jessica hesitated, a fraction of a second betraying her doubt. "Oh, of course," she said, stepping aside, her tone a little too tight. Simone noticed the fleeting expression, an unspoken question, a silent, "Do you really belong here?" She ignored it. She just wanted to get settled and enjoy the flight, but Jessica wasn't letting it go. Something gnawed at her. They didn't look like first-class passengers. The first-class cabin of American Horizon Flight 227 was an oasis of luxury. Plush reclining seats, personal service, a curated menu. It was what Nathan and Simone had worked so hard for. AA squealed, with delight, her little fingers exploring the seat controls. "Mommy, look! My chair moves!" Jaden, still focused on his game, grumbled. "Cool!" Simone chuckled, loving their excitement. Nathan remained unruffled by the earlier encounter. He'd faced similar microaggressions before. People assuming, second-guessing, treating him like he didn't belong. He wouldn't let it ruin their vacation. Jessica, however, kept watching. She moved through the cabin, assisting other passengers, but her eyes kept drifting back to 2A and 2B. They didn't act like the usual first-class crowd. No designer luggage, no business suits, no quiet, effortless entitlement. The dad in a hoodie, the mom in a simple dress, the kids loud and excited. They seemed too comfortable. Jessica pressed her lips together. She approached Megan, another flight attendant setting up the drink cart. "Hey," Jessica whispered. "Did you check that family's boarding passes when they got on?" Megan looked up. "The ones in 2A and 2B?" Jessica nodded. "Yeah, they're fine," Megan said, twisting the cap on a bottle of sparkling water. "Why?" Jessica hesitated. "No reason," she said, forcing a smile. "Just checking." But she wasn't convinced. Minutes later, as the last passenger settled, Jessica returned to 2A and 2B, an air of authority surrounding her. She stopped beside Nathan and Simone, flashing a polite but forced smile. "Sir, ma'am, I'm going to need to see your tickets again." Nathan looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. "Why?" Jessica didn't hesitate. "Just a routine verification." Simone frowned. "We already scanned our passes at the gate." Jessica's smile didn't waver. "I understand, ma'am, but sometimes mistakes happen." Nathan exhaled, reaching for his phone. A few taps, and the digital boarding passes were displayed. He turned the device towards Jessica. "EO, 2A and 2B, he said, his voice calm but firm. "Like I said." Jessica barely glanced at it. "Thank you," she said, her tone clipped, turning away. Something still nagged at her. She needed an excuse, something to validate her suspicion. Then, As if on cue, AA did exactly what Jessica had been waiting for. The little girl, still thrilled with the reclining seat, pressed a button too hard. The tray table sprung out with a loud clunk, startling an older gentleman across the aisle. Jessica whirled around, her jaw tightening. This was it. The disruption she needed. She squared her shoulders, took a breath, and marched back to 2A and 2B. Hands clasped in front of her like a school principal, she looked down at AA. "I'm sorry," Jessica said, her voice smooth but firm. "But I'm going to have to ask you to keep your children under control. This is a first-class cabin, and we expect a certain level of decorum." Nathan looked up, eyebrows raised. "Excuse me?" Jessica's smile remained, but with a noticeable edge. "It's a safety issue. If your daughter keeps playing with the seat functions, she could cause damage to the aircraft." Simone's mouth parted slightly. "She's just excited. She's not hurting anyone." Jessica folded her arms. "Regardless, we have to ensure a comfortable environment for all passengers." She glanced around as if seeking support, but no one seemed particularly disturbed. AA, sensing the tension, shrank back into her seat, clutching her stuffed bunny. Nathan exhaled slowly, keeping his composure. "Look, we're just sitting here, following the same rules as everyone else. So, what exactly is the problem?" Jessica's jaw tightened, unused to being questioned. "I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voices," she said, even though neither Nathan nor Simone had raised theirs. "You're being disruptive." Simone scoffed, crossing her arms. "We're being disruptive?" Nathan rubbed his temple, trying to remain calm. "Okay, let's get something straight. We paid for these seats. We're sitting here quietly. My daughter is 7 years old, and now all of a sudden, we're a problem." Jessica straightened. This was the pushback she expected. Entitled, argumentative, unwilling to follow simple rules. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, her voice cool and detached, "but I'm going to have to ask you to return to your assigned seats in economy." Silence. Nathan blinked. Simone's lips parted, no words coming out. Even Jaden looked up from his game. "What?" Simone finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jessica didn't flinch. "This section is reserved for first-class passengers. If you're confused about your seating, I'd be happy to assist." Nathan cut her off, his voice sharp now. "We are first-class passengers." He pulled out his phone again, flashing the same boarding passes she had already seen. 2A and 2B, he said, his tone clipped. "So, if there's some issue, you might want to check your system instead of assuming we don't belong here." Jessica's smile flickered for a second. She hadn't expected that, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I'm going to need you to step off the plane so we can clear up this misunderstanding." Simone let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "You have got to be kidding me." Jessica turned to another flight attendant near the cockpit. "Can we get security to the cabin, please?" Passengers stiffened, exchanged glances, or averted their eyes. Nathan leaned forward. "So let me get this straight. You're kicking us off this plane, in front of our kids because... What? You think we don't belong here?" Jessica tilted her head. "Sir, I need you to remain calm." Simone let out a bitter laugh. "You want him to remain calm? You've been harassing us since we boarded." Jessica turned to the officers, sighing dramatically. "I tried to resolve this, but they're refusing to cooperate. I don't want to delay the flight for the other passengers." The tall officer, clearly tired of the situation, turned to Nathan. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with us." Nathan stared at him, breathing through his nose. For a second, Simone thought he would refuse. But then, slowly, he stood. Simone followed, shaking her head in disbelief. Jaden put his switch away without a word. AA, tears forming in her eyes, clutched her bunny. Passengers watched in awkward silence as the Reynolds family gathered their things and walked towards the aisle. Nathan glanced at Jessica one last time. She was smirking, as if she had won. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because the man she'd just kicked off. The plane didn't just buy first-class seats, he owned the airline. The moment Nathan, Simone, and their children stepped into the terminal, the air felt heavy with humiliation. Ava wiped her eyes. Jaden stared at the floor. Simone was furious. "I swear, Nathan, if you don't say something—" Nathan exhaled, pressing a hand to his forehead. He hated scenes, but this was beyond anything he was willing to tolerate. Before he could respond, murmurs started. Gate agents whispered. Passengers who had witnessed the incident hovered nearby, some shaking their heads, others filming. A woman approached Simone cautiously. "I saw everything," she said, her voice low. "That was wrong. Do you want me to call someone? Record a statement?" Simone smiled weakly. "Thanks, but no. This is bigger than that." A young man in a blue suit power walked towards them, his face pale, his airport badge flashing. "Mr. Reynolds?" he asked cautiously. Nathan turned, his expression unreadable. "I'm Daniel Ross, Director of Customer Relations," the man stammered, his voice strained. "I just got word of what happened. Could we step over here for a moment?" Nathan didn't move. "Before we do that," Simone said, crossing her arms, "do you even know who my husband is?" Daniel swallowed hard. He absolutely did. That's why he was sweating. Nathan wasn't just a first-class passenger, he was one of the airline's largest investors. They had press releases, photos with the CEO, the whole 9 yards. And now this. Jessica Barnes had embarrassed the company at the highest level, and the higher-ups were just realizing it. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mr. Reynolds, I sincerely apologize. I assure you this is not a reflection of our airline's values." Nathan held up a hand. "You said you got word of what happened," he said, his voice measured. "So what exactly did you hear?" Daniel hesitated. "I was informed there was a misunderstanding regarding your seats and that—" Simone scoffed. "A misunderstanding?" Nathan shook his head, his lips pressed together. "Let me make something very clear," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I don't need a scripted corporate apology. I need accountability." "Daniels Adams," Apple bobbed. "Of course, sir, absolutely. The flight attendant in question will be—" Nathan cut him off. "Bring her here." Daniel blinked. "Sir?" "You heard me," Nathan said. "Bring her here." Daniel twitched, hesitating, but one look at Nathan's face told him this was not a request. Yes, sir," he stammered, hurrying towards the jet bridge. Simone exhaled, glancing at her husband. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan didn't respond, but he knew exactly how this was going to go. Jessica Barnes was about to learn a hard lesson about consequences. Jessica Barnes stood near the front of the plane, sipping water, completely unfazed. She had just been doing her job. But then Daniel came with a face that looked 2 shades too pale. Her stomach dropped. "What's going on?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer. He just jerked his head toward the exit. That's when she saw them. Nathan and Simone Reynolds stood right there waiting. Jessica's breath hitched. The kids were gone, but Nathan was stone cold and Simone was staring straight through her. Jessica blinked. "Okay?" Simone scoffed. Daniel's hands twitched as if resisting the urge to rub his temples. "Mr. Nathan Reynolds," Daniel started. "Nathan Reynolds, as in the man who owns controlling stake in this airline." The silence hung between them. He spoke. "I'm going to give you a chance to explain yourself." "I was just doing my job," stammered Jessica. "There was confusion with the seating arrangements and I—" Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Confusion?" Jessica swallowed hard. "I thought they were in the wrong section." Simone narrowed her eyes. "Even after we showed you our tickets?" The silence was exhausting. He asked Miss Barnes, "What exactly about my family made you assume we didn't belong in first class?" Jessica's throat tightened, because no matter how she tried to spin it, the truth sat like a heavy stone in the pit of her stomach. "You had multiple chances to fix this. When you asked for our tickets the first time, when you called security. As of this moment, you're fired." He looked at her badge. "Your badge now?" As of that moment, Jessica staggered. Then Nathan turned to Daniel. Make sure this never happens again. Back in the terminal, Nathan and Simone had their children, waiting for the airline CEO to call. Jaden was quiet and AA, still shaken, clung to her mother's side. What are you thinking? Asked Simone. Nathan inhaled. That no matter how much we achieve, we'll always run into people like her. Simone squeezed his hand. Yeah, but this time she didn't win. When Daniel returned, he was deeply relieved that things hadn't escalated further. Mr. Reynolds, he said carefully, the CEO has personally instructed that you and your family be upgraded to our private jet service for your trip to Maui, at no cost, of course. Tell your CEO this isn't about an apology. This is about making sure that next time a black family walks onto one of your planes, they're treated with the same respect as everyone else. As they stood, AA asked, Are we still going to Hawaii? Nathan smiled. Yeah? We are, because no one was going to take that away from them. It's easy to judge people by how they look. It's easy to assume. But before you do, ask yourself, what if you're wrong? Because sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who can change your life forever. Remember to subscribe to the channel to watch the next video.